Good morning, everyone. Today is December 10th. It's 10 a.m. or whatever the real time is, since the clock still says it's 11:30. I know that we've reported that a few times. Would we all please rise as Legislator Harcum leads us in a pledge of the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, give us the strength, courage, and wisdom to always act in the interest of the people of Westchester County. Let's keep in mind that every decision that we make impacts upon the life, health, and safety of all our great county residents. Amen. Madam Clerk.
Majority Leader Harcum.
Here.
Minority Leader Mazzano.
Here.
Ms. Borgia.
Here.
Mr. Burrows.
Here.
Mr. Gelfarb.
Here.
Mr. Kaplowitz.
Present.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Perez.
Here.
Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Ms. Shimsky.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Williams. Mr. Chairman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Mr. Harcum, on the consent agenda.
Yes, would move the consent agenda without revision.
Mr. Mazzano. This is the consent agenda.
We haven't gotten to the minutes yet. We're doing consent.
Thank you. Ms. Shimsky.
I concur.
Thank you. We are on consent. For the minutes, Mr. Harcum.
Yes, Mr. Chair, would move to table the minutes at this time.
Mr. Mazzano, on the second. Without objection, members. No worries. Madam Clerk, a long roll call on tabling the minutes.
Mr. Harcum.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfarb.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplowitz.
Aye.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Approved 16-0.
Mr. Harcum, on our public hearings.
Yes, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move to suspend the regular order of business for the purpose of conducting 3 public hearings.
Thank you, Mr. Harcum. Madam Clerk.
Notices of today's hearings were published in the Journal News. I have proof of publication, which is available for inspection in my office. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. I'll call the names of the speakers and ask that you please come down the aisle to my left and wait behind the black ropes. Public hearing number 1 was submitted by the Committees on Government Operations and Budget and Appropriations on proposed capital project SW005, post-storm infrastructure reconstruction and rehabilitation to reconstruct, make repairs to, and rehabilitate various county sewer district infrastructures following Superstorm Sandy, with cost thereof to be apportioned amongst the county sanitary sewer districts. Mr. Chairman, I have no cards.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Harcum.
Move to close the public hearing.
And this public hearing number 1 is closed. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing number 2 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget and Appropriations is on proposed capital project SY043, Yonkers Joint Wastewater Treatment Plant, post-storm reconstruction and rehabilitation to reconstruct, make repairs to, and rehabilitate the Yonkers Joint Wastewater Treatment Plant following Superstorm Sandy, with no cost thereof to be apportioned amongst the sewer districts. Mr. Chairman, I have no cards.
Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to close the second public hearing.
The public hearing number 2 is closed. Madam Clerk.
Third public hearing from the Committees on Legislation and Government Operations. A local law adding a new Chapter 532 to the laws of Westchester County in relation to the disposal and application of waste associated with natural gas exploration and extraction activities. Again, each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll call the names of the speakers and ask that you please come down the aisle to my left. Ellen Weiniger, Elizabeth Radow, Marion Rose, Carol Griffiths, Susan Schwartz, Daria Gregg, Ann Jaffe Holmes, Alicia Malloy, Charles Zygmunt. And the first speaker will be Ellen Weiniger.
Good morning. Thank you to the Westchester County Board of Legislators for the opportunity to address the board regarding legislation that has been proposed to ban the sale, application, and disposal in Westchester County of radioactive waste, highly radioactive waste from natural gas drilling operations. I am Ellen Weininger, and I live in Westchester. I am the Educational Outreach Coordinator for Grassroots Environmental Education, a science-based environmental health nonprofit which works with a network of leading medical and scientific experts to bring peer-reviewed science to local and state governments, school systems, and other organizations. Protecting the health and safety of constituents is the most fundamental responsibility of government officials. We commend the work of government operations and legislative committees and the fulfillment of that responsibility that has been entrusted to them by the people of Westchester County. We urge the full board to fulfill that obligation by supporting and enacting this legislation. Radioactive fracking waste from shale gas drilling can potentially cause irreparable damage to our water, air, land, and food supply. There is no safe disposal plan in place for the billions of gallons of radioactive waste that is generated from gas extraction activities. This highly toxic mixture contains heavy metals, volatile organic compounds, brine, salty brine, and high levels of naturally occurring radioactive materials, including radium-226 and radium-228, which are known carcinogens. Radium-226 has a half-life of 1,600 years and is linked to bone, liver, and breast cancers. Although this radioactive waste exceeds criteria for hazardous waste, it is only classified as industrial waste and therefore is not properly tracked and is exempt from federal and state regulations. Level of total radium tested in wastewater from 11 active New York vertical gas wells averaged at over 8,400 picocuries, exceeding the EPA's maximum contaminant level for drinking water by more than 1,000-fold. Exposure to radium can result in anemia, cataracts, cancer, especially bone cancer, and death. Radium-226 emits gamma radiation, which can travel fairly long distances through air, raising risks for cancer in communities. Westchester's 7 wastewater treatment facilities are listed in the DEC as SGUY's appendix and can potentially receive radioactive fracking waste if permitted to do so. According to leading scientific experts, these treatment plants are not designed to treat these chemicals, contaminants, and highly radioactive materials. Processing radioactive waste through treatment plants can impact aquatic life and eventually the food chain. High bromide levels in this waste are especially problematic because they are highly corrosive to equipment and can react during water treatment to form brominated trihalomethanes linked to bladder and colon cancers and also with birth defects. The DEC also permits the use of fracking brine for road spreading, such as de-icing and dust control. This will expose passengers, drivers, and pedestrians and contaminate nearby surface waters, residential areas, and will become airborne. Gas industry hauling this fracking waste is not marked. The trucks are unmarked, and therefore emergency responders will be unaware of these dangers. Pennsylvania can bring in their drilling waste into New York. It's already permitted. And also our active New York gas wells can also generate waste and can be used for these purposes. We urge the board to protect the public health of the residents of Westchester County from radioactive waste by supporting and enacting this legislation. I submit these remarks along with Ivan White's report on radiation and fracking waste. Thank you so much.
Elizabeth Ratto.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Radow. I am a lifelong New Yorker. I live, practice law, and pay taxes in Westchester County. I chair the Committee on Energy, Agriculture, and the Environment for the New York State League of Women Voters. I am also the president of the Larchmont-Mamaroneck League of Women Voters. My published research on the impacts of gas drilling on property rights and risk allocation has been sourced and cited by the New York Times and other nationally recognized publications. I speak regularly with people living in other states where gas drilling is polluting and poisoning public and private waterways. The fracking waste is often responsible. In May 2012, the NRDC released a report that concluded none of the most common ways of handling frack waste are safe. In 1978, torrential rains triggered the slow leaching of 20,000 tons of life-altering toxic chemicals buried in corroded drums at Love Canal, transforming this Niagara, New York region into what was characterized as the worst ecological disaster of its kind. It resulted in cancer, record numbers of miscarriages, and deformed newborns. Hundreds of families were evacuated, leaving a ghost town behind. The chemicals which caused cancer, birth defects, and threatened lives of people living near Love Canal are also used in hydraulic fracturing and flow back in the waste. A loophole in federal and state law exempts the toxic radioactive fracking waste from being treated as hazardous waste. And as I speak to you today, New York State is accepting hazardous fracking waste from Pennsylvania. Because of the loophole, fracking waste can get released into rivers and drinking water sources without removing the harmful contaminants, or the salty, toxic radioactive waste can be sold to municipalities that apply it to melt road ice and control dust, after which it runs off into nearby waterways or seeps into groundwater. Transporting fracking waste into Westchester County could introduce the kinds of risks New York saw in Love Canal. In recognition of the risks to our drinking water supply, Governor Cuomo and the DEC have agreed in principle to exempt the New York watershed from fracking. How ironic it would be to prohibit the actual fracking in the New York City watershed, but then allow the poisonous radioactive waste that results from the fracking to enter our county for de-icing and dust control purposes, only to have it run off from the treated roads into the very reservoir system the governor and DEC and all of us who drink water want to protect. It is therefore up to local government to address the matter. There is one certainty about this toxic radioactive drilling waste: its environmental and health impacts are expensive to handle and difficult, if not impossible, to mitigate. Who pays? These gas industry exemptions have the effect of shifting liability onto property owners and taxpayers whose water becomes contaminated from fracking waste. Gas industry SEC filings reveal that its operations can involve pollution and that the industry is not fully insured for its operations or the impacts. According to a 2010 Range Resources report, substantial increases in premiums exist in regions affected by hurricanes and tropical storms. Insurers have also limited how much they will pay on actual storm claims. In cases where the industry lacks enough insurance to cover a loss, it would have to pay out of its own pocket. With companies such as Norse Energy filing for bankruptcy protection and Chesapeake Energy cash-strapped because it is so highly leveraged, if pollution were to occur to our waterways as a result of frack waste brought here for treatment or road spreading, the county would expose Westchester residents to the cleanup as a taxpayer expense. As we all know, Westchester taxpayers are among the most highly taxed Americans. Currently, Westchester municipalities are struggling with the 2% tax cap. A sizable portion of our municipal budgets are already attributable to waste. Superstorm Sandy cleanup added to the tax budget burden. We don't need more. I commend the Westchester County Board of Legislators for this responsible law and urge all county legislators to protect health, environment, property value of, and tax burden on Westchester residents by passing this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marion Rose.
Good morning. I represent the Croton Watershed Clean Water Coalition, and we have the following comments to offer on the proposed local law 5675. The proposed legislation is critical in preventing dangerous levels of radioactive waste due to hydrofracturing activities from entering Westchester's environment. It will prevent radioactive brine from drilling wells from being spread on our roads, or the inadequate treatment of drilling wastewater by our wastewater treatment plants. Levels of radium-226 in New York State Marcellus shale wells are significantly above the established safe level of concentration in water. In some cases, they are 1,000 times the safe level, according to Appendix 13 of the New York State DEC's 2011 SGIS on shale gas extraction that shows results for 11 wells in the New York State Marcellus. Now, it is likely that as more Marcellus wells get drilled, extremely high levels of radium-226 will continue to emerge. This is because uranium-226 radium-238, of which radium-226 is a decay product, preferentially bonds to organic matter, like the algae that died over 300 million years ago and settled at the bottom of the oceans that formed the black shale that now constitutes the Marcellus Shale. These high levels of radioactivity are found in the brine that is extracted from the drilling wells and will probably continue to be found as more wells are drilled. Now, radium-226 has a long half-life, 1,600 years or 80 generations, during which it emits alpha particles that are extremely dangerous to human health if inhaled or ingested. If radium-226 is in an enclosed area, alpha particles emitted by its decay product, radon, are its second highest cause of lung cancer in the US. Moreover, when an alpha particle hits a cell nucleus, the DNA is likely to be damaged. Radium-226 half-life of 1,600 years means that once it's released into the environment and allowed to accumulate, for all intents and purposes, it will be around forever. To give you an illustration of the longevity of radium-226, the lab notebooks of Pierre and Marie Curie, who discovered radium over 100 years ago, are still so contaminated that they cannot be safely handled even today. When spread on roads, the radioactive brine can get washed during storm events into lawns, school playing fields, into streams, ponds, lakes, and reservoirs, into wetlands, recharge areas, and aquifers. It can be transported on the tires of cars onto private driveways and into garages. Once released in the environment, there's no way that radium-226 can be safely disposed of, not by us or future generations. The proposed legislation would wisely prevent this from happening.
Thank you, Mary.
Carol Griffiths.
Thank you, Board, for proposing this legislation and for listening to us. I'm here representing Federated Conservationists of Westchester, which has member organizations and individual members from all over Westchester. I'm also representing the Village of Tarrytown Environmental Advisory Council. And we are here to voice our strong support of the passage of the local law to ban the treatment of hydrofracking wastewater at wastewater treatment plants in Westchester County, and to ban the use of hydrofracking brine on roads in the county. The wastewater, as you have heard, that is produced by the extraction of oil and natural gas is known to contain harmful metals such as arsenic and lead, harmful levels of radioactive materials, and very, very salty brine. This is trucked from extraction sites to nearby wastewater treatment facilities, as extraction companies are unable to treat the waste themselves. Multiple scientific studies have proven that hydrofracking companies have not developed safer ways to dispose of contaminated water used in their operation. Increasingly, they are looking to further and further wastewater treatment facilities as an option for disposal. But these are unable to effectively remove those carcinogenic chemicals and often release polluted water back into the surrounding environment, and in this case, possibly the rivers and the Sound. In addition, the brine from hydrofracking operations is being sold to municipalities as a low-cost option for use as de-icing agents on roadways. Again, this brine is high in sodium content and high levels of radioactive radium, and we are concerned about the potential effects that releasing hydrofracking wastewater or the spreading of brine on the roadways could have on our watersheds and drinking water supplies. We're also concerned that we, as taxpayers, will have to pay for any of the damage to the environment and damage to public health that could result from this. The dangers to the county's residents, environment, and wildlife far outweigh the small economic benefit, if there is any, provided by hydrofracking companies. We strongly support the passage of this bill banning treatment and use of hydrofracking wastewater in Westchester County, as we believe this is a burden that should not be placed upon the residents of this county, on the diverse environmental ecosystem in this county, and the important watersheds located here.
Susan Schwartz.
The League of Women Voters of Westchester appreciates this opportunity to speak on behalf of this legislation. The League believes that pollution of our natural resources should be controlled in order to preserve the physical, chemical, and biological integrity of ecosystems and to protect public health. Because it is likely that extraction waste would come to market as a cheaper road spreader, and because waste treatment facilities in the county cannot safely handle toxic fracking fluids, passing this legislation would protect the health and environment of our communities. Based on this longstanding position, the League wholeheartedly supports the proposed legislation to ban the sale, application, and disposal of fracking fluids and wastes in Westchester County and recommends its passage. Thank you.
Daria Gregg.
Hello, I'm here representing the Green Sanctuary Committee from the Unitarian Universalist Church in Briarcliff, Ossining, Croton, and Cortland. And we've been working on anti-fracking issues over the last couple of years, and I urge you to pass this legislation. I just want to remind you that the only reason that we're even dealing with this is because on a federal level, the oil and gas industry got exempted from the Clean Water and the Clean Drinking Water and the Clean Air Acts, and therefore they're not addressing the hazards of this waste. And just since you just passed a budget proposal trying your best to keep our county taxes lower, the chemicals that are involved in this wastewater, which they've dealt with the previous speakers, but many of which are, besides the radioactive ones, are chemicals that would kill the bacteria in your sewage treatment plants, and they would no longer function as they should, so that would cost you a lot of money to repair. I'm just going to say ditto to all the other comments that have been said before.
And Jaffe Holmes.
Thank you very much. I'm Ann Jaffe Holmes, resident of Irvington, and I applaud and sincerely thank the members of the Board of Legislators who have brought forward this important piece of legislation, and strongly urge every one of you to stand together and vote unanimously in favor of this important legislation. As you know, the hydrofracking industry is leaving behind a serious trail of destruction. Water and land have been permanently poisoned, people have been sickened, and real estate has been rendered valueless. Imagine in Westchester County, we accept wastewater, radioactive and contaminated by hydrofracking. If you are considering voting against this piece of legislation, please ask yourself, which road in Westchester County shall we spread this on or allow it to be spread on? In any road in Westchester County, I guarantee you, you will see the same results as we're seeing in Pennsylvania. So I encourage you, remember that human bodies are made 75% water. We can live without natural gas. We cannot live without clean water. Thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration.
Alicia Malloy.
Good morning. My name is Alicia Malloy, and I'm the Program Director for the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County. When I invited my board members to attend the public meeting this morning, one of them replied back with this powerful message that bears repeating, and I wanted to share it with all of you. For those who may not know or remember, 30 years ago, dioxin-laced oil waste liquids were used as road spread in Times Beach, Missouri for over 10 years, causing serious health issues for the 2,500 residents. It was the largest civilian exposure to dioxin in the country's history. Some died, many became ill. After years of complaining by residents and doctors about health issues, US EPA stepped in, investigated the innocent contamination, and the federal government eventually bought up the whole town. Eventually, everybody was forced to sell while EPA created a Superfund site to process all the roads, coating materials, and even the house materials. Today, I hear the town is virtually abandoned. Don't repeat history. We do not want the same fate for Westchester County, which is why I strongly urge you to pass this legislation. Thank you for your time.
Charles Zygmunt.
I'm Charles Zygmunt, speaking as a private citizen. In addition to the deleterious effects of the radioactive brine that the other speakers have mentioned, are hundreds of chemicals that the industry is allowed to use in secret because they are considered proprietary trade secrets. So we don't really even know the full scope of the health effects, the possible health effects of this radioactive brine. I urge you to pass the bill, and I think that any cost savings in maintaining the roads that this radioactive waste might enable would be far outweighed by the health effects, the negative health effects of many citizens who live downstream from where the material would be spread on the roads. So I urge you, please pass the bill, and thank you for listening.
The next speaker is Nicola Coddington. As she's coming down to the podium, I'll call the names of the remaining speakers. M.J. Wilson, Edward Berry, Jordan Christensen, Krista Yakavone, Lisa Amberger, Susanna Glidden, Susan Van Dolce, Cher Commissar. Thank you. Nicola Coddington?
Jeanette Gould, last person to register at the desk out front. She
Okay.
said it would be fine.
Okay, but then you have to wait your turn. I'm sorry. The next speaker
I'm
is
sorry.
Nicola Coddington. I don't even have a card for you yet.
Not a problem.
Good morning. I'm Nicola Coddington, a 29-year resident of Westchester County and taxpayer. I am the chair of the Irvington Green Policy Task Force, and I'd like to thank you for bringing this legislation to the floor. I know many of you through the years have worked very hard to protect the health and safety of the residents of Westchester and also to protect their financial liability. You've heard from many of the speakers already about the chemicals, the radioactivity, so I won't go over that. I'd just like to say that once these chemicals and the radioactivity is released into Westchester's environment, you can't put it back in the box. It's a Pandora's box. You can't take the radioactivity and treat it. You can't treat the chemicals. It would be insanity to allow this material into our environment with its impacts on ecosystems and our health. Thank you for the sanity represented by this legislation, and I urge you all to vote for it. Thank you.
M.J. Wilson?
Good morning. My name is M.J. Wilson, and I'm a resident of Westchester County. From the dawn of human time, the human race has been using materials from our planetary environment to help us survive and thrive. We have often gotten things right, but when we get it wrong, sometimes the scope and scale of what we get wrong in hindsight is stunning and the consequences dire. The harm can be dramatic and sudden, or it can be drawn out over a long period of time with slow, insidious, relentless harm, and those who cause that harm are never held fully and adequately accountable. We have a habit of creatively and aggressively developing ways to get what we want, in this case fossil fuel, before we develop a way to clean up after ourselves. That is for others to do. Please do not put us in the position to be a part of the natural gas industry's disposal afterthought. Let them clean up after their own room. I look to you, my County Board of Legislators, to do the right thing and to protect us, the residents of this unique and wonderful county, from the predatory, unscrupulous practices of a highly profitable, aggressive industry. Thank you.
Edward Berry.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the board this morning, and I thank you for your farsightedness and your proactive stance on a matter like this. I'm from Yonkers. I'm speaking as an executive board member of the Sierra Club. Presently, there are no safe disposal plans for the billions of gallons, that's right, billions, not millions, of gallons of radioactive toxic waste that is generated from fracking. And presently, because of lax state laws, this effluent is characterized as industrial waste, ergo, no strict regs. Westchester's 7 waste treatment plant facilities are listed as facilities that could potentially receive fracking waste. These treatment plants are not designed to treat the chemicals, heavy metals, and radioactive materials. Also, the New York State DEC permits the use of brine from certain kinds of fracking to be used as a de-icer and dust control on roads. Everyone else has spoken very eloquently about the dangers of this, so when you're number 12, you learn to cut your script and move on. I would like to quote from E. Evan White, a staff scientist for the National Council on Radiation Protection. And he says, the presence of the known carcinogenicity, radium, poses a potentially significant threat to human health. For example, if radioactive wastewater from hydrofracking is spread on a road, the cumulative effect of this radioactive waste will be determined by the amount of radiation contained, the number of vehicles, and the humans traveling. Westchester County roads get traveled a lot, so we're talking about a lot of contamination. More importantly, he says, the type of radioactive material found in the Marcellus Shale and brought to the surface by fracking, horizontal fracking, is the type that is particularly long-lived. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of that, and could easily bioaccumulate over time and deliver a dangerous radiation dose to potentially miss it. And in closing, finally, whether or not hydrofracking is permitted in New York State, the waste poses an immediate problem because it can be transferred in from Pennsylvania and other areas. So I thank you very much for taking up this serious issue, and I urge you to vote for this ban. Thank you.
Jordan Christensen.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jordan Christensen. I'm the Hudson Valley Program Coordinator for Citizens Campaign for the Environment. CCE is an 80,000-member nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy organization working to protect public health and the natural environment in New York and Connecticut. So everyone else has spoken pretty eloquently on the public health and the environmental impacts, so I just want to touch on a few brief points. Once fracking chemicals are used by the gas industry, those same chemicals are currently not considered hazardous or toxic when they resurface in fracking wastewater and cannot be, therefore, properly monitored or treated. The proper treatment and disposal of this liquid waste poses a great risk. Current water treatment infrastructure cannot meet the existing demand and increased treatment capacity for the radioactive and corrosive hydrofracking wastewater. The DEC estimates that over the next 20 years, New York State will need $36 billion in sewage and stormwater infrastructure increases, so adding flowback water to the current treatment plants could severely impact New York's ability to protect its surface and its drinking water. Furthermore, the composition of flowback water changes over time, so concentrations of metal increase, concentrations of iron increase, as do levels of radioactivity, and the total dissolved solids, chloride, and barium increase, making it harder to treat the water. Here in Westchester, outdated water infrastructure is already a problem, and the county lacks the resources to handle current waste, so adding unpredictable toxic flowback water to Westchester's water infrastructure could lead to severe contamination of our nearby waterways. Using this waste for purposes such as road spreading, de-icing, or dust suppression pose similar risks to treating our wastewater. The volatile, radioactive, and corrosive chemicals in hydrofracking waste end up seeping into our groundwater and getting into local surface water bodies through runoff. Hydrofracking waste is hazardous, and as of now, it cannot be safely recycled or reused. So on that note, Westchester cannot risk accepting the waste in its wastewater treatment plants or for any other purposes. So thank you for considering this legislation, and please pass the ban.
Krista Yakavone.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Westchester County Board of Legislators. My name is Krista Yakavone, and I'm a legal fellow with Riverkeeper. Riverkeeper is a member-supported watchdog organization dedicated to defending the Hudson River and its tributaries and protecting the drinking water supply of 9 million New York City and Hudson Valley residents. Riverkeeper is actively involved in advocacy surrounding the issue of fracking, in particular because of its potential impacts on the state's water supply. Riverkeeper commends the board for considering this legislation to protect county residents from the dangers posed by improperly treated and repurposed fracking waste. When a well is fracked, millions of gallons of fluid laced with hundreds of chemicals, many of which are carcinogens, are injected underground. Much of this chemical fluid flows back as waste. In addition, fracking mobilizes naturally occurring radioactive materials, also known as norms, and brine, which come up the well along with gas and must be disposed of. Speakers before me have spoken to how this fracking waste, although hazardous, has been not deemed so because of special exemptions given to the oil and gas industry, even though we know that this waste can wreak havoc on regular treatment plants. An investigative report from the New York Times showed that over a 3-year period in Pennsylvania, the industry sent over 1 billion gallons of fracking waste to treatment plants unequipped to handle it, causing the plants to discharge partially treated effluent containing this waste into Pennsylvania's waterways. In addition, waste sent to these typical treatment plants can damage the regular treatment plants' facilities and equipment. The board can take a significant step in protecting Westchester citizens by preventing treatment plants within the county from accepting fracking waste. In addition, New York State currently allows brine from low-volume vertical fracking operations to be spread on roads if special permission, called a beneficial use determination, is obtained from a regional Department of Environmental Conservation office. To maintain this permission, brine only needs to be tested for radioactivity once per year. This is completely inadequate to ensure the safety of citizens, as the radioactivity of brine applied will vary greatly depending on the well source. Ulster County has banned the spreading of this waste on its roads, and Dutchess County is considering similar legislation. We urge the board to follow suit today. Riverkeeper supports the board in passing this critical legislation, and thank you again for the opportunity to address the board this morning.
Lisa Amberger.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Amberger, and I'm a resident of Ossining and vice president of Ferry Sloops. Ferry Sloops is loosely tied to Clearwater and promotes appreciation of the Hudson River by taking the public on sails on the river. By experiencing the beauty of the Hudson firsthand, people come to appreciate what a wonderful resource this historic waterway is for all of us. We must support this legislation to protect the improvements seen in the water quality of the Hudson over the past decades. What a shame it would be to allow the river to become unsafe for swimming. Our sloop Wimbrel, as captain of our sloop Wimbrel, I would hate to have to warn passengers that the Hudson River water on which we sail could be extremely harmful to their health. Please make sure that these hydrofracking fluids byproducts are not allowed to run off into the beautiful Hudson River. Thank you.
Susanna Glidden.
Good morning. I'm a tax-paying resident of North Salem, a member of the Sierra Club Gas Drilling Task Force, director of Croton Watershed Clean Water Coalition, and today address my comments to you, please, as chair of Hands Across the Border. We're at a shocking crisis moment in planetary survival or natural resources and climate annihilation. 34 states in our once magnificent nation are being hydrofracked for shale gas and oil, which ruins forever our precious finite supply of fresh water as well as fragments forest and poisons the air and land in which we grow our food. The escaping or so-called fugitive methane from gas drilling at the wellhead, compressor stations, and pipelines is up to 120 times worse for climate impact than carbon dioxide. New York State DEC issues beneficial use determinations in an unlimited fashion for municipalities to spread New York vertical gas drilling wastewater on their roads. Several counties in the southern tier are awash in vertical frac waste with lethal chemicals. Drill cuttings from Pennsylvania and Ohio, Marcellus Shale high-volume horizontal drilling, loaded with radioactivity, heavy metals, volatile organic compounds, and carcinogenic chemicals, are being accepted in southern tier landfills by the multiple tons on a daily basis. It's sheer insanity what is happening. We deeply appreciate each and every one of you, dear legislators of Westchester County, by creating this legislation to keep Westchester safe from frac waste road spreading and treatment in wastewater plants. We look forward to its quick passage and County Executive Astorino signing it into law. We ask you on a personal as well as official level if you won't also do everything you can to help keep the state safe by supporting prohibition of New York horizontal drilling and the state's receipt of these poisons from other states. Help on a federal level to remove the Halliburton loophole from all our environmental protection laws. Help transfer subsidies from fossil fuels to viable renewable technologies and their wonderful smart grid distribution systems. Put New Yorkers and Americans to work with long-lasting jobs. Help break the Arab oil dependence by made in the USA sustainable energy. Transfer that military spending to the people's needs of education, health care, preserving Social Security, etc. Help us regain our energy policy of sanity, our democracy, our planet, our lives. Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Van Dolce.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have a chance to speak at this hearing. My name is Susan Van Dolson. I'm a resident of Harrison and a co-organizer of a grassroots group called Westchester for Change. And I greatly support this bill to prohibit the sale or application of gas drilling waste on all roads in the county and to prohibit gas drilling waste from being accepted at all wastewater treatment plants. The Government Operations Committee and the Committee on Legislation have thoroughly reviewed the scientific information that was provided and have crafted a very good bill. And I want to express my appreciation to the committee and to urge the entire board to pass this legislation, which will protect the health of Westchester residents as well as our environment. Similar legislation has been passed in other municipalities and counties because this waste is not classified as hazardous waste, as you've heard from other speakers, by New York State, and it's exempt from federal regulations, despite the fact that the waste contains radioactive materials, heavy metals, and toxic chemicals. It's critical that Westchester pass this legislation to fill this regulatory void. As the other speakers have stated, New York permits frac waste from low-volume wells, which contain the same components as high-volume wells, and that can be spread on the roads if they get a beneficial use determination from the DEC. And as the prior speaker and others have said, New York also permits drill cuttings to be transported to landfills from Pennsylvania and other states. I actually brought a list of one company's drill cuttings that are being sent to upstate New York. This is Chesapeake Energy, just one company, and I can leave that for the record. There's a link to their website. This is not a hypothetical problem that would only occur if New York permits high-volume hydraulic fracturing, but rather it's a problem in areas of our state right now. Environmental advocates of New York prepared this report, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, and I just want to quote something from this report. Quote, based on our analysis, the DEC doesn't know how much waste is being produced by the 6,628 active gas wells, what the waste is comprised of, where it is going, how it is being treated, or how it is ultimately being disposed. These failures are putting public health and New York's environment at risk. Therefore, I urge all of you to vote to pass this bill and to urge County Executive Astorino to sign the bill into law, which will fulfill your obligation to protect the health and well-being of the 1 million Westchester County residents. Thank you.
Chair Commissar.
Good day. I want to first apologize for the fact that I didn't prepare anything. I didn't expect to speak today, but I thought, well, let me get up, and even if I'm repeating, repetition, I guess, is the essence of change. So I'm a resident of Westchester. It's one of the reasons I'm here. I'm also a nutritional consultant, so maybe I can take the angle of health and the exploding conditions, degenerative conditions, neurological, the number of cancers. It's sort of moved up slowly, the percentages, but I can tell you because I read the statistics all the time. And so I know that they're on the increase, and much has to do with this bath of toxins, environmental toxins in the foods, et cetera, that people are being bathed in today. People cannot afford one more toxic load, and radiation is among the worst and the most offensive. I know the federal government is even eking up the acceptable levels. I saw that 3 days ago of radiation levels in beef. They're doing this because they have to keep accommodating for industry. We have to stop accommodating for select industrial groups and consider that it's people first. And we need to first have good lives on this planet. Thank you so much.
Jeanette Gould.
My name is Jeanette Gould. I am the co-chair of a Green Sanctuary Committee at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Briarcliff, Croton, and Ossining. My youngest daughter lives within shouting distance of the Delaware River. My 3 youngest grandchildren live there as well in an upscale neighborhood. But we do not know, and I do not know, and it is not known, what their options might be and what the effects might be on their reproductive lives. I would not like to see the same uncertainty and concern visited upon the children I teach in Westchester County, in Croton, and in Peekskill, nor on the grown-ups whom I love in the congregation that I belong to. That is what I wanted to, that's a perspective I wanted to bring you.
Helen Muir.
Good morning, I'm Helen Muir. I'm a resident of Pleasantville in Mount Pleasant. I'm the chair of the Conservation Advisory Council there, and I also have a grassroots environmental group called Green Peeville with about 250 members on the email list, and we've been discussing fracking. I would like to thank the legislators for proposing this legislation, and I've heard that the de-icing fluids could be very inexpensive and perhaps even free. And I'd just like to remind everybody of the phrase, there's no such thing as a free lunch. The cleanup and remediation for fracking waste or any toxic waste invariably always costs more than you saved in the first place. And some of it is not even able to be remediated, as in human health issues. And also, I'm concerned that by accepting any kind of fracking waste, we're effectively condoning the process of hydraulic fracking, which I'm vehemently against, and most people who have any concern for the environment also are against. Thank you.
Laura Niederhofer.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Laura Niederhofer, and I am a resident of Yorktown Heights and also a volunteer for Chefs for the Marcellus, a campaign of various food professionals opposed to fracking. I want to express my support for this bill and urge the board to pass the bill to prohibit fracking waste from being accepted at all Westchester County water treatment facilities or being spread on the roads because of my concern for the impact on local agriculture. I live down the road from Hilltop Hanover Farm, where I frequently purchase various food products, and I am deeply concerned about the potential for radioactive sludge to leach into the soil and water, contaminating the produce and livestock. If we potentially poison our soil and water by accepting the fluids, it will surely threaten our ability to produce healthy foods here in Westchester. There have been many documented cases of fracking waste fluids affecting livestock, causing reproductive issues, illness, and death. In Louisiana, 17 cows died after an hour's exposure to fracking fluid. In western Pennsylvania, pregnant cows were exposed to fracking wastewater, and half of their calves were born dead. As the public becomes increasingly aware of the dangers of fracking and its waste fluids, people will grow skeptical about consuming food that is grown or raised in areas where the radioactive fluids are accepted or distributed. Think of the economic implications this could have for Westchester farms, such as the county-run Hilltop Hanover and Mesquite farms, as well as Stowe Barns and many other private agricultural operations. These health impacts that cannot be overstated. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have no other cards.
Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to close the third and final public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Harcum. The public hearing is now closed. Let us continue with the regular order of business. Madam Clerk, I think we're up to public comment.
Each speaker shall have 3 minutes. I'll call the names of the speakers and ask that you please come down the aisle to my left behind the black ropes. Benjamin Zellemeyer, Laura Niederhofer, Susan Leifer, Jordan Christensen, Ed Riley. The first speaker is Benjamin Zellemeyer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm here on behalf of Ferncliff Manor, sale at Ferncliff, to express Ferncliff's concerns regarding the resolution that has been presented to the board in the agenda. Ferncliff appreciates the concerns of the board and the concerns of many of the legislators who have worked with us to try to find a new location for our outmoded facility. As you know, our preference is to relocate to the former West Help site in Greenburgh. It is financially feasible, it suits our needs, it can be brought in a timely way and within our budget. Nevertheless, because the legislature has expressed concerns about that site, we have worked with members of the legislature, including the chairman, to examine other sites, including Site D, the site that is referenced in the resolution. There are many, many issues outstanding regarding Site D that must be resolved before Ferncliff could request that the state approve that site. First, we have no description of the property at all. It is a 21-acre site, which 6 to 8 acres would be set aside for Ferncliff. Second, how would we get access to the site? The state requires us to have our facility in a residential setting, access through the institutions on the Grassland campus, the county jail, homeless shelters, the medical center itself, might not meet the state's criteria, and we might have to attempt to get access through corporate facilities on the other side of the property. Would those corporate controllers of access grant access to us? Under what conditions? At what cost? Third, are utilities available in order to serve our needs. We've been told that the current utilities available at the grasslands are not adequate to meet the needs that we would present. Fourth, what zoning and planning and site control issues are there that must be resolved? Are the local boards of the town of Mount Pleasant, where the site is located, willing to cooperate to enable Ferncliff to operate? The county doesn't have the right, just because the legislature or the county executive or both say that this would be a good place for Ferncliff. The county does not have the right to simply override local zoning. Fifth, the medical center has a right of first refusal, and there is a non-competition clause in the lease from the county to the medical center. Will they waive those rights? Will there be a cost involved? What is the cost of construction going to be at Site D? We know that the cost of construction at the West Help site will be reduced because we can make use of the existing administration building, the existing classrooms, and because the utilities are already there and access is already there. These are among the questions. There are many others. I've laid them out in a letter which I've presented that all of you will have access to. We recognize that this resolution may be an attempt to help us demonstrate to the state that we control a site, which the state has been insistent on. While we appreciate this, we think that it is premature until these questions are answered, because under present circumstances, without the information that we need, we cannot make a request of the site. This may make it appear that we have made progress. It may make it appear, if this resolution is adopted, that all the issues have been resolved, but we know that that's not so. They haven't been resolved. They must be resolved. And we don't want to see a resolution adopted that would preclude us from continuing to explore other sites, including the West Help site in Greenberg. Rather than adopting this resolution, we urge the board to consider both Site D and the West Help site for Ferncliff on its merits. Thank you.
Susan Leifer.
Hi, my name is Susan Leifer, and I seem to have gotten on the wrong list because I meant to talk about fracking. I just want to remind you that Pennsylvania, which welcomed with open arms fracking, is now has asked its frackers, the companies, not to put any more wastewater in their streams, in their wastewater plants. In other words, they've topped out, and that's why we have been inheriting some of it. I think if you pass it, and it looks very clearly that you will, it'll set a very good example for other counties to be able to do this also, where our borders are not impregnable, and any waste that comes from above us will still filter down into Westchester. When you have a storm like Sandy, there's no boundaries, there's no way that you can stop pollution from one area to the other. So I commend you on passing this bill. I think it'd be a great idea. I also like to say one small thing. Children's umbilical cords, this is before they've even been on Earth for a day, have 107 chemicals in them. 107 chemicals which we do not know what the combination, we do not know what some of them will do, but we certainly do not know what the soup will do, the mixture of them. And as much as we can to prevent pollution entering our waterways, our land, our air, our kids, I think would be very important. So I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Jordan Christensen. Ed Riley.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to get a clarification. When does the clock start? When I get here or when I walk down? When I start. Okay, I'm starting. I'm Ed Riley from Croton. I'd like to talk to you about Planned Parenthood. For 35 times, we've asked the Abortion Caucus in the Democratic Party to investigate how Planned Parenthood conducted business and conducts business in Westchester County. Last time I was here, we reported the death of a 24-year-old black woman. They don't count, by the way. Black women don't count. Death of a 24-year-old black woman who died after an abortion in a Planned Parenthood facility located in Michigan Avenue, Cook County, Obama land. The autopsy found that she died of a hemorrhage following a cervical dilation evacuation called a D&E. By the way, for you curious people, when you get out of here, get a computer and look up what a D&E does. How do you kill a child with a D&E abortion? I'd like to correct the previous speaker, talking about the umbilical cord. Before the child is here on Earth, when you're a child in the womb, when you were a child in the womb, I don't know what planet you were on, but I believe you were on the planet Earth. Now, as a follow-up to that, and if you saw this beautiful girl, now it doesn't record whether the children, whether there were twins or one child, or whether in most cases in the world the child was a girl child that was killed. It doesn't say that. It just says she's a beautiful 24-year-old. But now the parents are going to sue Planned Parenthood. Evidently they have lousy lawyers in Chicago. They're going to sue Planned Parenthood for $180,000. Not only did this abortionist botch the abortion, as usual, Planned Parenthood failed to call the emergency services in a quick and forthright manner, attempted to cover it up, and then divulged the death. She subsequently died in the hospital. That's their typical MO. The second thing I'd like to bring to your attention, which has been brought to your attention before, Planned Parenthood has a pattern throughout the United States of bilking Medicaid. And in this case, the Iowa case, which is a whistleblower suit brought by a 17-year employee of Planned Parenthood, said that Planned Parenthood bilked 500,000 cases of Medicaid fraud in the state of Iowa. And this is not an exception. This is what they did in Illinois, which is controlled by Obama and its Democratic thugs, in Illinois, in Indiana, in Iowa, and Texas. By the way, in Texas, it's only 65,000 cases of Medicaid fraud. In the case in Iowa, it's interesting. They sent out contraceptives, which they bought at $2.80 for a 30-day supply. They charged the government $28. That's 1,000% markup. And then when the stuff was returned, they sold it again. We've asked Shimsky and Company, Williams and Company, Perez and Company, I forget my own legislator, Borgia and Company, Williams and Company, Harkham and Company, and Myers and Company to investigate the way Planned Parenthood has conducted business in Westchester County, because we believe they have killed women just the way they did in California and Colorado, and the way they administered RU 486.
Mr. Chairman, I have no other cards.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Let's continue with the regular order of
Mr.
business.
Chair, point of order?
Yes, sir, Mr.
I would move to take item 5675 out of order and address that item of business now.
Mr. Mazzano has been moved and seconded without objection.
Actually, and it would also be 5674, both items, please.
That would be items number 5 and 6. That would be ID 5674 and ID number 5675. That's ID numbers 5 and 6. Members without objection. Madam Clerk, item 5.
Item 5674 from the Committees on Legislation and Government Operations, an environmental resolution determining there will be no significant adverse impact on the environment from the proposed action.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The two items before us, with your permission, let me take both of them up at one time. As the clerk has just discussed, we have a resolution before us, environmental resolution determining that there will be no significant adverse impact on the environment from the proposed action. And of course, item 5675, item 6 on this morning's agenda, is the proposed local law.
These two reports come from the board's Legislation and Government Operations Committees, and the proposed local law will add a new Chapter 532 to the laws of Westchester County in relation to the sale, application, and disposal of waste associated with natural gas exploration and extraction activities. This is a very, very important piece of legislation that we have before us this morning, and we are indeed fortunate because preceding today's discussion was a public hearing. And we had an opportunity here in this chamber and our audience, as well as those who are viewing this meeting as it's being streamed live right into their homes on their computers, was an excellent opportunity for us to get a rather detailed sampling, to tell you the truth, of the kind of testimony and information that was provided by an assembly of great advocates for the need for this measure. The Government Operations Committee and the Legislation Committee benefited tremendously from the active participation of these advocates and from the wealth of information that they provided to the board through the two committees for our greater understanding of what was at issue here. As I mentioned, a lot of great information shared this morning. Of course, now we're dealing with the actual item on our agenda, and so let me put into the record a few of the highlights of what we discussed and considered during the committee meetings for legislation and government ops. We, of course, know that we're aware that the hydraulic fracturing is a process in which shale formations are fractured by man-made fluid-driven techniques for the purpose of stimulating natural gas or oil well production. We also know that the fluids utilized in and that remain, or result rather, from this process contain toxic substances that cannot be adequately filtered by wastewater treatment facilities. And of course, our oversight responsibilities with respect to public works, environmental facilities, our sewage treatment plants, we quickly realized that we have 7 wastewater treatment plants in Westchester that could potentially receive waste from natural gas exploration and extraction activities. We know also that natural gas exploration and extraction activities such as hydraulic fracturing create multiple types of liquid and solid waste, which poses significant public health and environmental risk if sent to those facilities. The committees, when you look at our proceedings, our discussion, the committees certainly are of the opinion that the risks are simply too great to allow natural gas exploration and extraction waste to be sent to our treatment facilities, and many of the good reasons we're going into in greater detail by the speakers in our hearing. The fact remains that when all is said and done and you weigh both sides of the argument, we know that our particular plants are not designed to handle the chemicals or the contaminants, the radioactive material in this waste. We also heard this morning in the hearing that state DEC currently permits the use of produced fluids from low-volume hydraulic fracturing operations for road spreading as a de-icer, dust control. We heard about that. We know of the added possibility of a great amount of material from high-volume hydraulic fracturing could possibly be used on roads, and all of that would be pending a further study by the regulators of its radioactive ingredients. So that's not very comforting. And we also heard this morning, once again, that waste from this process is accepted into landfills here in New York, and that has to be of great concern to our communities, who are always thinking about the safety and the protection of our drinking water. The information is, rather the legislation is rather brief, and it's rather concise. And I'm going to go right to the prohibition section, read these 3 into the record. Passage of this legislation will prohibit the following: the introduction of natural gas waste into any wastewater treatment facility within or operated by the County of Westchester, the sale of natural gas waste within the County of Westchester, and the application of natural gas waste on any road or real property located within the county. And once again, all three of those would be prohibited with the enactment of this proposal. I guess finally, I don't want to repeat a lot of what was said this morning. You have the committee's opinion, both legislation and government operations. It forms the basis for these reports that have been sent to the board this morning. We are very mindful, and we weighed heavily the risks to public health and to environmental quality. We spent a lot of time thinking about the need, because we have such a tremendous track record when it comes to our drinking water, the need to yet take another step to protect our very important drinking water supply. As I started this discussion this morning, Mr. Chairman, this is very important legislation. This is a very important step that we need to take, and legislation and government operations asked the board to pass this important legislation this morning during our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot has been said about the rationale and need for this legislation in Westchester County, which I will not repeat. I did want to discuss a little bit about the process that we went through in the Government Operations Committee and in the Legislation Committee when we were crafting this piece of legislation. As Legislator Ryan says, it is elegant in its simplicity. When the beginning of this year, I was fortunate to take a field trip to Pennsylvania to speak to both advocates and opponents of hydraulic fracking and see firsthand some of the impacts that fracking has had on the communities where it's been conducted in Pennsylvania. However, this legislation really doesn't take a stand on whether or not fracking should be permitted in New York State. That's something that is currently under discussion at the state level. And there is, there's a lot of discussion on both sides of the issue. However, what this legislation does is talks about how we will handle or proposes to help us to mitigate any potential liability, environmental liability, financial liability that the county might have as a result of the application of the byproducts of hydraulic fracking on our roads, or the treatment of hydraulic fracking byproducts in our wastewater treatment plants. So this is a preventative measure that looks towards mitigating future environmental impacts and financial impacts for the county of Westchester. It was an interesting process. We did discuss this several times, both in government operations, and I attended as a guest the legislation committee, and we did want to make sure that we crafted the best piece of legislation. So one of the good objections that came from this legislation, from Legislator Marcotte actually, was the fact that we didn't want to cause additional liability for our municipalities if they inadvertently applied material that had hydraulic fracking waste, because the byproducts of fracking they weren't notified that those existed in the materials that they were using. So as a result of that conversation, I did speak to members of the state delegation and have asked them to introduce a bill in January when the new New York State legislative session starts, to require any vendor that does business on the state contract to list whether or not the items that they are selling on the state contract, which is where most of our municipalities purchase their materials for road treatment, to list whether or not it does have fracking byproducts. And then one other small point that I want to make is that you heard people at the public hearing talk about the sale of material that contains byproducts. And we were very careful in both committees to craft the legislation so that it also indicated if a municipality had gotten brine or dewatered brine, the actual salt, for free. So the prohibition, as Legislator Ryan read, about the application of natural gas waste is uniform, whether or not a municipality has purchased or received at no cost. We believe this is a very good bill for the county of Westchester. We think that this is something that looks proactively very far into the future, that protects not only the residents of Westchester who live here now, but many, many, many future generations. We do feel that this is something that other counties around us, and speaking to the advocates who spoke here today, they are going to bring our law as an example to other counties in our immediate vicinity. And we think Westchester's on the forefront. We're not the first county, but we're an early county to really look at the potential impacts of this process and decide for ourselves how we will handle it in this county. So Government Operations Committee, after a lot of discussion, did recommend the passage of this bill, and I certainly hope my colleagues on the board will support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Mr. Harcum. Very good. Ms. Myers.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief, but I would like to congratulate both of the committees on legislation and government operations for doing a very, very thorough vetting of all of the details concerning the prohibition of the hydrofracking fluids, both on the roads and out of the wastewater treatment plants. I would also, though, like to take this opportunity to thank all of the advocates who have worked so hard over these past few months to educate not only all of the public, but also all of us with an incredible array of documentation and explanation for all of the items that we've been discussing and that we heard about today. And I think it really does reflect how democracy works, how advocacy works, and it's been a very, very positive experience, and I'd like to thank them all for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a gentleman in the public's hearing said, when you go 12th, there's very little left to say. A few points I wanted to touch on. One, what Legislator Myers said is that democracy works best from the ground up, and this piece of legislation was just one of those. From our first meetings with the advocates, through working with our committee chairs, Borgia and Ryan, it was really a grassroots and a team effort, and I'm grateful to all involved. Just two quick things that should be pointed out in this legislation versus some of the other is that this deals with all sewage treatment facilities in the county, not just county-owned. We were able to get verification from our law department on this. It also deals with all roads. And it's important that we specified both because while there are county roads in Westchester, unlike other counties, county roads make up a small percentage. And up in my district, for instance, I'm smack dab in the middle of the New York City watershed, it's critical that we protect the watershed, both in terms of our aquifers and the drinking water for much of Westchester and New York City from potential contaminants, both in the sewage treatment plants that after tertiary treatment would drain into those water bodies or from spreading on roads. And certainly all sewage treatment plants, because the further north you go, certainly, we have fewer county treatment plants, but we have more private treatment plants, and many of them have excess capacity and would be looking for new customers to drive revenue. So I think it's really important. The other thing I would want to mention is there was some discussion of the fines and the severity of the fines levied during this discussion. And I think it's important that we send a signal in Westchester that you can't put a price on the safety of our drinking water. whether it's the water for other folks or the water we drink right in our neighborhoods and our individual wells in the northern part of the county. That's not for negotiation. It's just too dangerous and fragile a resource, and I'm glad that we stuck to our guns on that. So again, I would like to thank everybody from the advocates to the committee members who worked so hard on this. I think we've really crafted a groundbreaking piece of legislation, no pun intended, and look forward to its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harcum. Other members? Madam Clerk, a long roll call vote, please.
Mr. Harcum.
Yes.
Mr. Maisano. Yes. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Yes. Mr. Gelfarb.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplowitz.
Aye.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Breckman. Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Approved 17-0. Item 5675 from the Committees on Legislation and Government Operations is a local law adding a new Chapter 532 to the laws of Westchester County in relation to the disposal and application of waste associated with natural gas exploration and extraction activities.
Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Chairman, as previously discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Members, without objection, so ordered. Thank you. We have a policy. We neither clap nor boo, but thank you.
Approved 17-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Item 5664 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget and Appropriations, an act amending the 2012 County Capital Budget Appropriation for Capital Project SW005, Post-Storm Infrastructure Reconstruction and Rehabilitation.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I'd like to take these two, this number 1 and number 2 together. This references a request by the county executive for a capital budget amendment to address the post-storm Sandy infrastructure reconstruction and rehabilitation. It would call for bonding in the amount of $1,850,000 that would be applied to 2012. And this is to provide major repair and rehab to all of the infrastructure that was destroyed by and left unworkable by Superstorm Sandy. I should also note that the Department of Environmental Facilities anticipates reimbursement on some or all of these costs hereof from disaster assistance through the FEMA or insurance coverage. This was approved out of Budget and Appropriations. I turn this over to Government Operations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we all know, the superstorm did create a great deal of difficulty for our infrastructure in general. We heard from our all of our departments actually about the work that needs to happen as a result of this storm. This is obviously one area where we need to make fast investments so that we can recover in the most expedient way possible. Government Operations was unanimous in our support of both of these, in support of this of this bond in this CBA.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5665 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget and Appropriations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $1,850,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SW005, post-storm infrastructure reconstruction and rehabilitation.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, as previously discussed. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5667 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget and Appropriations, an act amending the 2012 County Capital Budget Appropriation for Capital Project SY043, Yonkers Joint Wastewater Treatment Plant Post-Storm Reconstruction and Rehabilitation.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I'd like to take this and the next item up together, please. As we just discussed with the post-storm damage to our infrastructure, this bond and capital budget amendment pertain specifically to the Yonkers Joint Wastewater Treatment Plant due to the severe damage that occurred because of Superstorm Sandy. This amends the 2012 capital budget as requested by the county executive in the amount of $9,950,000. It includes, it's actually the amount of $12,650,000 for the new capital project, of which $9,950,000 would be bonded, together with $2,700,000 in current funds of the county. And again, it should be noted that the department does anticipate reimbursement of some or all of the costs hereof from disaster assistance through FEMA and/or our insurance coverage. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia?
Thank you. As Legislator Myers said, this was pulled out because of the severity of the damage done to this particular wastewater treatment plant. Commissioner Loro did describe to us over the course of a number of meetings exactly how the storm surge impacted or destroyed the motors of many of the mechanicals inside the wastewater treatment plant. The interesting thing I think that came of that conversation was to hear some of the measures that he is planning to take to possibly prevent damage of this type happening should we have a future storm of this severity, or even the severity of our last big disaster, Hurricane Irene. So it was an education certainly for the Government Operations Committee, and we applaud his efforts to be proactive using the amount of money that we're authorizing today, but also to think about future storms and how we might be able to mitigate the need to do large expenses like this after the next superstorm, which we hope, of course, won't be soon, but it's better to prepare for the worst. So the Government Operations Committee also was very much in favor of moving forward with this, and we recommend its passage.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item, we're on discussion on items 3 and 4, 5, 6, 6, 7, and 5, 6, 6, 8. Without objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of item 5, 6, 6, 7. That's item 3. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5668 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $9,950,000 of the county to pay part of the $12,650,000 to finance capital project SY043, Yonkers Joint Wastewater Treatment Plant Post-Storm Infrastructure Reconstruction and Rehabilitation.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, as previously discussed, so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5254 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Public Safety and Security, an act authorizing an IMA with Nassau County pursuant to which Westchester County, through the Department of Labs and Research, will provide trace evidence analysis for the Nassau County Crime Lab.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is an intermunicipal agreement between the County of Westchester and the County of Nassau that would provide our Department of Laboratory and Research facilities to analyze trace evidence for Nassau County Crime Lab, which is currently not in operation and has been closed down. And the Nassau County Medical Examiner has asked the department for assistance in performing this trace evidence analysis, and they will be duly billed, and a fee schedule is attached to this intermunicipal agreement. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a pass-through legislation, actually. It won't be costing us anything. It is a grant, and it won't be needing to hire anyone else, so moved.
Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5578 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Community Services, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the City of Mount Vernon for the provision of a positive youth development program.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is actually something that has come to us through the Youth Bureau and our Invest in Kids program. This is an act that would enable the county to enter into an IMA with the City of Mount Vernon to operate so that the city can operate the Girls Embracing Maturity program, the GEM program, which is a 3-year-long program and runs from 2012 to 2014. The Youth Bureau has discussed, and as actually many of these young women have come forward to discuss, the effectiveness of this program, and the Budget and Appropriations Committee heartily endorses its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Community Services has reviewed this program, the GEM program, and believes it offers serious opportunities for youth-positive growth, and both socially and educationally, and will play an important part in gaining mature, responsible maturity. So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Members on this item? Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add my support for this program as a member of the Westchester County Youth Bureau. Prior to being elected to this board, I was able to participate in the evaluation of this program, and I have to say that the positive results of this program were very impressive and heartwarming, is the best word I can think of. So I hope that my colleagues will support this.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Other members? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5579 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Public Safety and Security, an act authorizing Westchester County to enter into a regional partnership agreement with Dutchess and Putnam counties in order to receive funding from the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services under FY11 Hazardous Materials Grant Program.
Ms. Myers.
Yes. This is a communication that came through the county executive that is an act that would authorize the county to, through its Department of Emergency Services, to enter into this regional partnership agreement on behalf of itself, Dutchess County and Putnam County, regional partners, whereby the 3 counties would be awarded $76,584 to divide between itself to purchase highly specialized gas and vapor detection equipment. This is the pass-through actually, and it comes through the Department of Homeland Security, and the Budget Department. The Budget and Appropriations Committee heartily endorses this IMA. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Other members? Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually want to clarify. This is the item that I was speaking of before. This is the pass-through one. The previous one was the trace evidence. That was a renewal of an IMA. We will make a revenue of $12,000, and it'll cost us $3,300, but we'll be reimbursed and make a profit out of that. So this one is the one that I was speaking about before. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Members on this item? Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly, as a member of both Budget and Public Safety, let me say that perhaps create a picture. The state obviously has financial assistance that it makes available to municipalities in the area of public safety. With respect to hazardous materials response, hazmat response, there has been a change in the state program, and what they're looking to do is finance operations regionally. And so in this particular case, what we have is the the coordinator of activities, that being our DES department and its counterparts in Putnam and Dutchess, coming together to form a regional partnership that the state can now provide resources to. The idea is to add to the inventory of, for example, Westchester's Department of Emergency Services, shared equipment that these resources, these funds will purchase, shared equipment that will be utilized by Westchester DES and by Putnam and Dutchess's emergency responders. It puts us in a tremendous position to do some very important things. For example, we're just a short distance away from the Westchester County Center. If there was an event there and 2,000 people were in attendance, and all of a sudden county police and the local jurisdiction, White Plains, received a call that people were collapsing inside the building or coming out the door and collapsing on the steps, the first responders, probably the police, are not going to know what is causing this. Naturally, the locals have a responsibility for an adequate first response, which they do. Typically, it's fire and ambulance. But in this particular case, it requires a specialized service response, and Westchester County DES would be called to respond. With these new capabilities and the new equipment, once they arrive on scene and they get into personal protective gear, which they would do because of the uncertainty of the environment, with this equipment, they're able to immediately put it into an environment where it can indicate what types of gases and vapors are present, so they immediately know what they're dealing with. It's a very, very important capability. The state is assisting us in getting there, and the new change is they do it through a partnership, and here in the Hudson Valley, the partnership happens to be at least one of them, Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Other members on this item? Unless there's an objection, members, we're going to take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5653 from the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county attorney to compromise the claim against Sandoz made on behalf of the county to be reimbursed for overpayments in connection with Medicaid prescription drugs provided to residents by the county.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is an act that does allow, it authorizes the county attorney to compromise on the claim against the pharmaceutical company Sandoz made on behalf of Westchester County, so that we can be reimbursed for overpayments in connection with Medicaid prescription drugs provided to the residents of Westchester County. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5686 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, an act authorizing the county to enter into an agreement with Westchester Airport Associates and the county IDA, which would settle pending claims related to the operation of parking facilities at the county airport.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is an act that was brought to us by our transportation people out at Westchester County Airport, asking that we settle claims of the county and the airport related to specific parking operations at the airport that came about due to the development of an emergency overflow parking lot in 2008 and what has been called a cell phone lot at the airport in October of 2007, both of which have been utilized quite successfully, but this does settle the claim that this settles the claims against us, and the Budget and Appropriations Committee moved this forward to Government Operations, and I will turn this over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Myers. Ms. Borgia on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Government Operations Committee did also review this item that was requested by the county attorney for us to take it up quickly, which we were very pleased to do. As Legislator Myers said, it is both a settlement of a claim and a renegotiation of the contract with the Westchester Airport Association, so that They will now be the operators of the cell phone lot, the 30-minute free parking. We felt that this was a well-negotiated settlement, and we urge its passage.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5722 from the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the City of Mount Vernon, pursuant to which the city will provide a summer basketball program for the period July 1, 2012 through September 30, 2012, for a total amount not to exceed $40,000.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is actually an IMA with the City of Mount Vernon for a program that was actually held this past summer at the Mount Vernon High School gym, and provided 2 cycles of 3 weeks each. Maximum of 85 boys and girls ages 8 to 17 registered in each cycle, who not only learned basketball but life skills. And the Budget and Appropriations Committee discussed this in full and thoroughly endorses its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5408 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations is a resolution to set a public hearing pursuant to Section 237.101 of the laws of Westchester County on a proposed agreement between the County of Westchester and the State University of New York, acting through Purchase College, pursuant to which the college shall be permitted to discharge sanitary wastewater into the Blind Brook Sanitary Sewer District for a period of 3 years.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I would move that we set this public hearing for January 7th, 2013 at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the setting of the public hearing, January 7th, 2013. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Under special orders, item 5726.
Madam Chair, thank you. This item is going to be recommitted after hearing from both the, from Ferncliff earlier today, and also all the emails that were on your desk for today as well, requesting us to consider it.
Item 5727. This item was vetoed by the county executive on September 24, 2012. Appears
That item's also being recommitted.
Motions, resolutions, call of the districts.
Motions, resolutions, call of the districts. I'm going to add, Mr. Maizano, I'm going to add in Eula Daisy Ford. I know Mr. Williams, Miss Williams are on that as well. I'm not sure if any other members, Ms. Shimsky, maybe all members should be considering this. This is David Ford's wife. For those of you that know, I'm sure Miss...
All legislators.
All legislators.
Please, Mr. Chair.
All legislators. Mr. Maizano.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to put one thing on the record before we close. Having read our rules closely over the last week, it is my view, one legislator's view, although I think it's supported by other legislators as well, that pursuant to our board's rules, Rule 23 and Rule 3 when taken together, and if there's any lack of clarity by our board rules from Mason's manual, that when we close our meeting, which is our next thing, adjournment, as everyone can see on our agenda, it says the word adjournment, that must be done by either a long or a short roll call vote. So I just want to make clear, as the minority leader going forward, at all Board of Legislators meetings, I will be asking for either a long or a short call vote when we adjourn. So for today's purposes, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask for a long roll call vote when we adjourn. Thank you.
No problem, Mr. Maizano. Just going for a record that we've never done that, but, you know, it's in our rules, and it's certainly always in order. Thank you, Ms. Borgia.
I just wanted to mention that my constituent, Chris Weltheimer, was the director of the Tarrytown Warner Library, and wanted to invite Legislator Kaplowitz and Legislator Williams A. to join me on the resolution, if they would so desire.
Yes, please.
They have been added. Other members? All right. If we all could please rise for a moment of silence for those that were mentioned in the memorial resolutions. We will have the motion from Mr. Harcum, and then we will have either a short or long roll call vote. We'll do a long roll call vote for you today, Mr. Mazzano. Yes, sir. Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, in light of the suggestion and the motion by my colleague here, I would move that we adjourn and we would reconvene on January 7th, 2013 at 7 p.m. and wish everyone a safe and healthy and happy holiday season.
As Mr. Harcum has said, happy holidays to everyone. We may need to have a meeting on an item just so members, the clerk will check with you for that special meeting. That is for the DES building that just came down in today's communication. So hopefully we can do that before the end of the year. Madam Clerk, a long roll call. Mr. Mazzano, I will assume you are seconding Mr. Harcum's motion. Thank you so much. A long roll call vote on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. Harcum.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Borgia. Mr. Perez. Mr. Gelfarb.
Yes.
Mr. Kaplowitz. Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez. Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Approved 17-0.
Have a great day. We are now closed.